Hello and welcome back to another episode of Radio Gorepress. We call them episodes. Why do we call them episodes, Phil? They're not episodic.
Oh, that's true. What should we call them?
I don't know. Show?
Yeah.
Absolute abomination?
That's probably more likely.
Orchestrated disaster?
Travesty. Welcome to Travesty 91.
Yeah.
A Radio Gorepress.
That's sticking now. That's way more accurate. Welcome to Organised Chaos 91. Oh dear.
Organised is generous.
Yeah, true. This is a great start. Long-time listeners will already know. My name is Sarah. Joining me, as always, is my lovely co-host, Phil.
Hello.
How you doing, Phil?
I am achy. I fell down the stairs 3 times over the weekend.
No! How?
Well, so I went back to my parents for the weekend, and their staircase is slightly similar to it's similar to the one we have in our house, but I guess the measurements must be slightly wonky. Slightly off. So I'm used to just like coming down the stairs in my house, and because of the variation in like the width of the stairs or something, I just slipped, and it happened 3 times.
You're used to a very precise set of steps, and they were off by a hair.
I must be.
Oh dear.
How are you doing, Sarah?
Yeah, not too bad. It's been an exhausting week. Loads of stuff's been going wrong at work, necessitating a new £4,000 piece of machinery. Half of it's paid off already. We've got a month to pay the other half off. So if anybody's been wanting to sign up to the Patreon, now would be a good time. It's all right. Work's going all right. It's keeping me out of trouble, as they say. But yeah, it's knackering, and the days are getting a little bit shorter now. So it's starting to feel dark. A bit more tiring, isn't it?
Yeah.
When it gets dark
but
at
that
6
Halloween
p.m.
soon.
It does. It's going to be very different this year, isn't it?
It is.
Have you got anything planned?
Not particularly. I think if we still can, probably have a friend over. And
a whole friend?
A whole friend. I know. I have them. Who knew?
Only one at a time, though.
Exactly. Like one household at a time.
Yeah.
I think we'll just watch like creepy movies, spooky movies or something.
Do you have Halloween favourites that you like to have in rotation?
We spoke about this the other day. I don't think I do.
Okay.
I'm just happy like seeing where my mood takes me. I think there's some that I will be more inclined to watch, I think. I can imagine, I would think Beetlejuice is a very good Halloween watch.
Beetlejuice is such a fun Halloween movie.
Because that's what you want. You want fun, don't you? It's not just necessarily spooky. It's spooky and fun.
100%.
And Beetlejuice is very much spooky and fun.
I think for me, numero uno would have to be Trick or Treat.
Of course.
Closely followed, after last year's show, by Trick or Treat. Just to confuse matters entirely.
Trick or Treats and Trick or Treat.
Trick or Treat. Because I hadn't seen that before we covered it this time last year. So I think that might make it into my yearly Halloween rewatches.
Okay.
Yeah, and Trick or Treat is always a fun time. That's been my Halloween watch sort of probably coming up to like 10 years now.
Oh, wow.
So
that's some dedication.
It is. It's almost stubborn at this point. It's like, I've come this far, I can't not watch it.
It's tradition. That's what tradition's all about.
Yeah.
It's just getting so invested in something. Yeah.
Somewhat resentfully watching things you don't necessarily want to watch.
Out of just an overwhelming sense of obligation.
I think that's a really good summation of tradition. I like that. That kind of sums up Christmas to me. Ugh. The C word. Let's not talk about that.
That's a whole other thing.
Going back to Halloween, that's a very nice segue straight into a nice segue into the film that we're covering this week.
Yeah.
which is, I was about to just like launch into the discussion. We should probably say it. It's 2018's Halloween, because we have already covered 1978's Halloween. We've already covered Halloween 3, parentheses, still Sarah's favourite of the franchise. Don't at me, because I'm not even on Instagram anymore. You can't. Oh, that's great. That's a really good part of not being online. Nobody can argue with me. Oh, just they could find me in real life, I suppose.
Shout your opinions into the void and
open a window, yell as loud as you can, and I might hear you. There we go. Yeah. So I kind of already know your thoughts on this, because this is one we saw in the cinema together.
We saw it in the cinema, didn't we?
We did. That was one of the now infamous times that I shouted at people for talking.
You did, didn't you?
It wasn't even relevant to the film.
Were they eating loudly? I can't remember. What was?
No,
what
they
was
were just
situation?
chatting about their weekend.
Oh, the worst kind of people.
Yeah, so I just asked if they could do it after the film, and they dialed it back a notch, but they didn't shut up. It wasn't 100% successful.
No.
They have ruined my cinema narc success rate. How dare they? So we talked about this at the time. So I have a vague idea of how you feel about this, and a pretty good idea of how you feel about slashers in general.
Mm-hmm.
So I am interested to know whether or how much your opinion may have changed. Okay. On second viewing. So we'll get to that later. So this is probably a good time to preface with the fact that I am like a really big simp for the Halloween franchise.
You are indeed, yes.
And Jamie Lee Curtis in general. Phil, however, not so much.
Yeah. I just don't tend to get on that well with slasher movies.
You do. So I feel like a lot of your reasons for not loving slasher movies are kind of my reasons for loving them. I find comfort in the predictability. Mm-hmm. It's like a comfort blanket of a movie.
Yeah. That's fair.
Do you know what I mean? There's a gobby one, there's a slutty one. We know who's going to die. Mm-hmm. We generally know in what order. You can tell who the final girl's going to be, or final boy in the case of The Burning. Shout out to The Burning. And yeah, I just find solace in the predictability of it.
That's fair. I think that's a reasonable excuse to enjoy them.
Yeah.
I think I don't know. I just find them all a bit, and I think I'm probably being too critical. It's probably one of those things where my view has been a little biased, I guess. I just find them a bit interchangeable sometimes.
I would 100% agree with that. Many of them are completely, like, it's the same template.
Yeah.
Just reskinned.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, exactly. And I think that's why it's hard for me to get too excited. But I mean, like, I don't not like them.
Okay.
I mean, you know, your mileage may vary, you know, it depends on the film itself, but as a rule, I don't dislike them, but I just
You don't have to justify it.
I'm just explaining my view.
You are among friend.
Among friend.
Individual. So are there any slashers that you particularly do like? Are there any that kind of stand out to you as being head and shoulders above the identikit?
I think if I gave it some thought, I could probably think of some that really do.
Okay. You enjoyed Behind the Mask, didn't you?
That was one of the ones I was thinking of. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I did enjoy that. And I was about to say, I think of the trilogy, as it were. Nightmare on Elm Street is up there for me, and I think that's because there's just that extra dimension of the kind of creativity of dreams and such in those movies.
Well, it's so imaginative.
Whereas Jason and Michael Myers are just, tall guy in a mask with sharp object,
Well, actually, to back up your point, I was doing one of the Evolution of Horror online quizzes that they've done about 3 during lockdown. I think I've mentioned them before. But I was doing one, and one of the rounds was it was a movie synopsis, or a character description rather, written as a dating profile.
Okay.
And there was one, and my friend and I who were doing it, like at the exact same time, he said Friday the 13th, and I said Hatchet.
Okay.
And actually, I was really annoyed because it was Friday the 13th. But the more we thought about it, exact same origin story. Except one of them was burned, the other one was drowned.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, to sort of back up your point, I mean, I'm sure to some degree, Adam Green is so entrenched in the genre that was probably intentional.
I'm sure.
Like a pastiche of slasher movies more than anything. But they all have like this semi-tragic backstory or enigmatic, kind of mysterious backstory. Insert reason A, B, C are now psychotic / undead.
Whatever they decide to run
We'll get
with.
to that. Unkillable. Is that, do you know what? Is that one of the reasons you don't like it? Because that I would understand.
Oh, yeah, you don't understand any of my other reasons.
Less so.
About them being a bit, invincible.
Yeah. Because then it's hard to root for people if you're just like, well, he's just going to get up again. What's the point?
I mean, I don't think that's something that stood out, but probably, like, to a certain degree at least. But then that boils down to to what you're saying about how they're predictable. Like there's a reason these tropes exist, and that's because a lot of these slashers just do the same sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, there might be something there.
Okay.
She'll have to ponder upon it.
Yeah, have a think. So before we delve too much into the film that we're here to discuss, it almost feels like a moot point, but I was about to say, do you want to give us a little bit of a synopsis? I'm sure everybody's already seen it or are familiar to some degree with Halloween as a franchise, but because we are quite a spoilery podcast, maybe give us a little brief rundown.
Okay, I shall be playing the part of Rosie today. It's been 40 years since Laurie Strode survived a vicious attack from crazed killer Michael Myers on Halloween night. Locked up in an institution, Myers manages to escape when his bus transfer goes horribly wrong. Laurie now faces a terrifying showdown when the masked madman returns to Haddonfield, Illinois. But this time, she's ready for him. Bum, bum, bum.
Does it say that? Did you add that?
But it should.
Did you
that
add
was for
that?
dramatic effect, yeah.
That's very cheeky.
I mean, that's me. That's me all over.
Cheeky chappy. That's a pretty succinct and accurate synopsis.
It's good, isn't it? Well done, Google.
Now, I can understand why, if you are not as fond of the first Halloween, that you might not get as excited as I did when I found out this was happening.
I remember when you saw the trailer, you were very excited.
I'm a very excitable lady. What can I say? And then I found out it was Blumhouse, and my excitement was somewhat tempered because they do some phenomenal stuff, but they also do some absolute dreck. So I was worried. And then I heard that it was going to be David Gordon Green and Danny McBride.
Right. One of my notes says, Danny McBride, producer role.
Well, I mean, I think David Gordon Green, didn't he do Eastbound and Down, which was that really sort of quite a dark comedy series.
Okay.
With Danny McBride as like the odious main character. I only saw, I think, the first or second season. It was it was all right, but it's one of those where you have to be okay with the main character being an absolute arsehole.
He did Pineapple Express.
He did Pineapple Express, which, do you know what? I really enjoy.
I was going through films with my parents over the weekend, and Dad was like, "Oh, what's Pineapple Express about?" And I was like, "Not sure it's going to be your thing."
You never know. Don't you dare pigeonhole your dad.
It's fair, but
he's a grown boy. Let him make his own decisions.
Didn't want to risk that.
No, I genuinely quite enjoyed Pineapple Express. Love me some Franco. He's crazy. Legitimately.
He's bonkers, isn't he?
I love that his career model just seems to be jack of all trades, master of precisely zero. Bit of acting, bit of writing, bit of painting. Not particularly amazing at any of them, but he's a trier.
Gives it a go. Why not?
God loves a trier. So yeah, with that caliber in the background, I wasn't sure what to expect. But then I kind of realised that there is the conversation that we've had time and time again, off and on the podcast, about horror and comedy kind of hitting a lot of the same beats, having a lot in common, being kind of universal. It makes sense that the two would be transferable.
No, yeah, I agree, and it's. I'm surprised that I haven't seen much more like discourse about that, because not that there necessarily needs to be any, but it is so. They're just so interchangeable. It's just the rise and fall of tension followed by punchlines. Like it's they're just so equivalent, and so you're right.
Yeah.
Like someone who has a sense of comic timing can probably understand how to sort of script a good horror movie.
Yeah. And also when I say kind of universal, I mean like in terms of the fact that horror and comedy can both be very visual mediums. So you can sort of watch them in any language and potentially get something out of them. Whereas perhaps not with like an exposition driven sci-fi or something, you know, you wouldn't get as much out of it. And I think that's interesting. And the more I thought about it, there are other examples. I mean, look at Peter Jackson, for example, did Meet the Feebles.
Braindead.
And then onto serious films. People like Todd Phillips did The Hangover, and then Joker.
Yeah.
So like a lot of them do make the leap to more serious movies. It's not unheard of. With it, you know, serious movies with a darker edge. But also, I'm not sure I would put that in the same category as this, because I find this, it's a straight up horror film, don't get me wrong.
Yep.
But there are moments where I laugh.
Yes.
And I believe that's intentional. I think that's the intended response.
So what moments were you referring to?
Well,
I mean, don't need to be super specific, but
I don't want to get too far ahead of myself.
Okay.
But the kid that's being babysat, also known as the best character in the entire film.
Yes.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, like there are some, like the characters are really engaging. A lot of them are, not necessarily all of them, but you know, you get a sense of humor there. They're actually fun to watch, and too often you get in horror movies, you get these just the worst protagonists in the world. And so it is enjoyable when a film kind of serves you up some protagonists that actually you quite enjoy watching and having fun together and all sorts, you know.
I'm really glad that the film didn't focus too heavily on Laurie's granddaughter, because obviously they kind of set her up as the Scream Queen, kind of to take the mantle from Jamie Lee Curtis, so to speak. And the fact that they even intentionally cast an unknown actress above a lot of names that they saw, like I think Emma Roberts was one, and I can't remember who else, but apparently there were quite a few sort of bigger name actresses, but because Jamie Lee Curtis had been a complete unknown when Halloween came out, they wanted to replicate that. And I think the actress they cast was pretty good.
Yeah.
Like she looked a little bit mousy to begin with. I wasn't sure, but then so did Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah.
She was like the goody two shoes, wasn't she? Like a bit nerdy.
You often do find that, like the kind of fairly Well, because that's the thing, that obviously the idea of the final girl is supposed to be very demure and virginal and
girl next door.
Yeah, that's kind of why they survive, because they aren't partaking in drugs or sex, and I think it would make sense for her to seem very kind of, like you say, demure, because it does set her up in that kind of potentially that final girl role.
Yeah. I'm glad that they didn't concentrate on her too much.
Mm-hmm.
I did worry that at one point the film would sort of be a facsimile of Halloween, in that it would just sort of follow her and her friends, and they'd get picked off one by one. And some of that does happen, but it's not quite as by the numbers as I was worried it might be to begin with. So let's start right at the beginning, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
And the two characters that I hate the most in this film, the two journalists, if you can call them that.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I love how that opening is filmed. I think it looks stunning, and although it leans perilously close to that cliche of orange and teal, the colour grading is like phenomenal. It looks amazing. We get a bit of exposition. We learn that Dr. Loomis passed away. And I was worried I'd missed something, because they sort of gloss over that quite quickly, don't they? Like the psychiatrist is saying, like, he sort of studied under Dr. Loomis, and he also became obsessed with Michael Myers by, like, proxy. And that Dr. Loomis passed away. But of course, this being a complete continuation of 1978's Halloween, the last we knew, Dr. Loomis is very much alive and well. So
I mean, it has been 40 years. So.
It has been 40 years. And Donald Pleasance has done his fair share of Halloween movies at this point. So, but I did wonder if that was just like a throwaway to explain why why they weren't replacing Dr. Loomis, or if there was more to it. Because I'll be honest, there is some stuff here in this film that I didn't care for.
Okay.
The psychiatrist subplot being one of them. We'll get to that.
Okay.
So the two journalists. First question. So they go into the courtyard where they keep all the most dangerous patients at this insane asylum. Probably not the PC term. Institution.
All socially distancing, I hasten to add. They've got nice little social distance squares.
Pre-COVID.
Very sensible.
Yeah. Definitely outside of sneezing parameters. Good work. So he's got his back to them. And the male journalist, to like provoke a reaction or goad him in some way, pulls out the mask and starts doing the whole, oh, you can tell it's here, can't you? You can feel it, can't you, Michael? Firstly, question. How the fuck has that dickhead got the mask? Why isn't that locked away in a police station somewhere? What did he do? Buy it on eBay?
He just bought a William Shatner mask.
And it's just really old now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was disproportionately annoyed at that. And then it just sort of cuts to the credits, the opening credit scene. On second viewing, it didn't bother me as much. But I remember the first time I watched that thinking that, because I mean, normally the pre-credit scene, we get a kill.
Yeah.
You expect something to, I don't know, jolt the audience, and then you get the credit sequence. But it was just like loads of people outside in a courtyard going, ooh, and then credits. It was a bit like, oh, okay.
I did enjoy how that whole scene kind of gave Michael Myers a bit of like almost a supernatural feel. Like, I know he's a man, but just the way
you don't know
all of the other kind of,
you don't know what gender binary Michael Myers.
Fair point. But like all of the patients were kind of picking up on the tension and starting to kind of make a bit of a racket, and it gave it, particularly with like the checkerboard kind of floor pattern and the way everyone's kind of laid out in kind of squares in these kind of equidistance apart. It just gave it a bit of almost like a ritualistic feel or something.
Yeah.
It was just something a bit kind of, there was just something a bit more kind of to it than just like a courtyard in a kind of a sort of hospital.
I would agree with that, definitely. Like, again, first viewing, I was just like, well, this seems a bit like needlessly pretentious. It looks cool, but what's the point? But yeah, now you said that, it does sort of, it adds to that like unsettling air. Okay. Oh, maybe it's you that's going to change my mind about this film.
Who knows? And the other point I was going to say, and I'm sure we'll perhaps pick up on it a little later as well. One of the things I was trying to work out, and I think I was going to sort of planned on asking you during this episode, is how what you thought about the way they handled the tone of this, because it's almost like, you know how kind of a genre will go through like the serious genre, then the parody genre, then the gritty reboot. Like it's
then
almost
the
like
one
that gritty
space.
reboot. Yeah, basically. I mean, it's more of a genre thing rather than a franchise thing, but this seemed to be more of a realistic take. It didn't seem as campy as a lot of like other Halloween movies.
Yeah.
And I was wondering what you thought of that.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I think if they'd gone in any other direction, it would not have worked nearly as well. Because it is a just straight up continuation of the first film, absolutely shit canning everything that comes after the first one, which honestly kind of love. So I respect that. And I have a lot of love for that franchise as a whole. Don't get me wrong. But I think if they tried to shoehorn in kind of references to everything that had happened, and because I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis had other children in some of the other sequels. This is like, I think the fifth Halloween movie Laurie Strode had been in. It would have been too much. I love that they just went back to basics. And actually, I think tonally, it's really in keeping. I think this is like, this might be heresy to some people, and I will not apologize for it. But I think this is kind of as close to a John Carpenter Halloween movie as there has been since other people took over.
That's fair. Like, it's almost like, in a way, probably not as meta, but it's kind of a bit New Nightmare in the sense that it's trying to like pull back how silly the franchise has gotten and make it.
I love New Nightmare.
Not bring it back down to earth, but you know what I mean. It's
I
more.
do. I like that. I like that reference. I like that film.
I'm glad you think so, because I was like, am I just talking out my ass? I don't know my slashers as well as Sarah.
No, I love New Nightmare because it's like the proto-Scream, isn't it? It's all the ideas he had, and then Wes Craven sort of honed all those ideas for Scream. New Nightmare's great. Sorry. But yes, I completely agree. It was a reclamation of what Halloween had always been intended as. Absolutely. But not devoid of humour, not devoid of
no, of course not.
Parts where it's, okay to breathe a sigh of relief and have a bit of a laugh. I think that's great. I love this sort of. I'm assuming Nick Castle and John Carpenter are like buds in real life, and I love that Nick Castle came back as the Shape. And I say that I think they must be buds because they co-wrote Escape from New York together, which I always forget actually. And Tom Atkins' character in The Fog was called Nick Castle.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they obviously have some sort of a friendship behind the scenes, and I fucking love that. And I like to think, I don't know a great deal about how Carpenter viewed this film. I assume he had to give it his blessing. I know he was sort of quoted as saying, this is the last Halloween film there would ever be. But at the time he said that, he was already contractually obliged for there to be sequels. So he was talking out of his arse. He's just a grumpy old codger these days, which I love. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, how do you feel about that? Because this is obviously he would have to be for it to make sense, but this is the oldest actor to ever have played Michael Myers. I think he was 78.
Oh, okay.
Which, like I say, he would have had to be for it to make sense.
I think he's sort of canonically in this film 61, I think.
Okay.
But I mean, it's kind of almost a blink and you miss it thing. It almost doesn't really matter. I mean, it lends the credence that there's something else to him, whether it's just his mental state or whatever it may be, that he's just so kind of unstoppable, that regardless of age, he's just still Michael Myers. But it just doesn't really. It doesn't really change much. I don't think, because as soon as he puts the mask on, he's Michael Myers, and it could be anyone underneath. You know.
I did love that scene. To skip ahead ever so slightly, we catch back up again with our friends, the journalists, who were one of my other notes about this film. I'm just going to touch on this very briefly while it's in my head. Why are they dressed so anachronistically? Right. It seems I was going to say, it seems like every single character in this film is not only from a different time period, but sometimes it seems like they're from a different film. And I don't know if that's like to fuck with you.
No, I noted down that it was just how like anachronistic their fashion was and how like vintage it was. And I was wondering if it was. I wrote it down and then thought I must look at this going forward to see if it's a thing they're trying to do, and then promptly forgot about it entirely. But yeah, like it was almost as if they're trying to nod that it's like this is the 78 Halloween and not anything past that. Because
they were dressed very 70s, weren't they? So do you think?
Right.
I mean, you could be right there. It could well be just that it's one big nod to the stylistic choices and the fact that they are referencing the first Halloween. But yeah, isn't that funny that stuck out to both of us?
Yeah.
But yeah, the scene at the gas station. So I was about to say the first on-screen kill, but it's not, is it? There are 19 kills in this movie, apparently. I couldn't name all of them.
No, me neither.
Already promptly forgot. Because a lot of them, this is one of the things about Halloween, is that a lot of them tend to happen off-screen. There's a good handful that you only see the aftermath of.
I think that's quite a common, not necessarily off-screen, but just the implication of kills.
Because of the implication?
Because of the implication. I'm glad you went there as well. But, for example, the scene in Texas Chainsaw, like everyone knows, I'm sure everyone can remember how bloody it is, but actually you look at it and a lot of it is just implied.
Oh yeah, there's almost no gore in that film.
Yeah.
It's crazy but it's so suggestive that there's like this collective misremembering of how gnarly it is, but actually it's not. So it's actually quite an exercise in very restrained horror filmmaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that weird? But yeah, the two journalists are fairly brutally murdered in the gas station toilet.
Yep. Can I just say how horrendous it is that they are just so keen on getting Laurie to revisit all of her trauma? Like, just don't do it. Just leave her to be. leave her in peace
Yeah.
to live her life. What dicks. Anyway, you were saying.
Them and like everybody else. Like, just stop bringing it up. But genuinely, one of my notes about this scene was the only thing worse than being murdered is being murdered in a public toilet.
Public toilet, no less, yeah.
I actually wrote grotty public toilet, but then I realised that the grotty part was sort of suggested by the public part. So,
are there any public toilets that aren't grotty?
None that I can name.
Train spotting would like a word.
Oh, good Lord, no. Philip, stop that. So in the scene post-killing, where he goes and he gets the mask and he puts it on, and it's just the most fan service bullshit moment, and I lapped it up like a child. It was iconic. No, didn't do anything for you?
Not as much.
You're just like, oh, calm down, Sarah. No, I love that.
It's Michael Myers. He was going to put on the mask.
I know, but it was so cool.
I know. I am not for a second belittling.
Why am I on the side of Michael Myers? There are actually a lot of moments in this film that I fully expected to happen, and I was still overjoyed when they did.
Okay.
Mostly in the second half of the film, so I'm going to come back to that. I'll put a pin in it. And yeah, another note that I had, sort of talking about how they completely like retconned everything beyond the first movie. That fucking throwaway line, that cheap throwaway line about him not being her brother. It's the most obvious, like you can just picture them typing it up and just like patting themselves on the back. Well done, guys. But it still brought a smile to my face. I don't know if that's sad or not.
No, I agree. I think it's acknowledging the kind of sequels that came afterwards without actually kind of bending to them, I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
it's saying, yep, they existed, it's fine, but let's just ignore them for now.
The less said about that, the better, lads. Yeah, I mean, I quite liked it because they weren't kind of condemning that, even though it was a fucking stupid plot twist, if you ask me. But yeah, it didn't feel like they were shitting on it. They were still kind of respecting the legacy of the films that had come before while going, hey, wait, wink, wink. I liked that. So back to Laurie. Something like, not to get deep on you here.
Okay.
But something that I wanted to talk about that I found really interesting, and I couldn't think of any other, at least good examples of it having been done before, is that it's actually kind of a genius angle to sort of explore the PTSD that would be involved if you had been through the events of a slasher movie. I can't think of any other instances where it's been done this well.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what adds to what I was getting at earlier about it being kind of much more grounded. Like, this isn't a film where a character can like watch their friends die and then just come out and live happily ever after.
Yeah.
Like, it's acknowledging that it's a traumatic event and there are, there's recurring psychoses that kind of happen from that.
Yeah, and still stay with you well into like late life.
Yeah. And I think that's a really neat idea because, like I said, it helps ground it. It helps kind of, because I think as you say, if it was campy and tongue in cheek,
that wouldn't have sit well.
I don't think it was like, as you mentioned, like Joker as well. Like it isn't like Todd Phillips' Joker isn't a comic book supervillain. It's a man brought to the edge over society's mistreatment. And I think that's very much kind of that attitude is very much in the public eye at the moment in a lot of films.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But on the flip side of that, I don't think they dwelled on it to the point of it being to the detriment of the film. Like the film didn't suffer for it. It was still a lot of fun, but it was good that they kind of allowed for a little exploration of like, you know, the psychological impacts of.
Yeah. Well, so I looked it up. You know, there's a scene where Laurie's granddaughter's in a class and they're referring to a book, which is Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl.
Okay.
And it is written by a guy who escaped the concentration camps in Nazi Germany and spent his life looking for positivity in life.
Oh.
It was a neat kind of reference because it shows kind of what Laurie should have been doing, you know, or at least the way she perhaps could have, or what they wanted her to do, what her family wanted her to do.
Was the epilogue of the book "Don't go on Twitter"? Is that how
I'm
you?
Sure it was. I'm sure Viktor Frankl, survivor of Nazi concentration camps, told everyone not to go on Twitter.
Yeah, that's how to find positivity and and happiness in life. Don't go on Twitter. Don't read the comments. You're golden. Right?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
No, that's really interesting though, and I wasn't aware of the book. I wasn't aware of the content of the book.
No,
that's
me
a
neither.
nice little nod.
I when they mentioned it, I was like, oh, I wonder who that is referring to. I just looked it up, and like I said, it just ties into the themes of kind of lasting kind of significance from a, you know, kind of a traumatic incident.
I like that. I like when stuff's clearly really well thought out down to like the smaller details. Because as you know, obviously I dated a filmmaker for a little while, and he had only made short films at that point. But every time, like he said, whenever somebody would interview and sort of say, why was this balloon red? And he would like make up some guff about the colour red and, you know, what the connotations were. In reality, he just wanted it to be red. So I've always got that in the back of my head when I'm trying to ascribe meaning to things. I'm just like, am I being a wanker or is this what it means? Do you know what I mean?
No, I think it's significant. Like maybe not to that extent or degree, but
no, I think
knowing as a writer, like knowing your characters and knowing things that you never actually share with the audience will help inform how the character progresses through the narrative.
Yeah, no.
So I think there is a lot of credence to the idea that there are these things that the audience doesn't necessarily need to know, but inform.
But if you choose to look a bit
film.
deeper, then I like that, and I think you're bang on with that reference. Certainly, that's really interesting. I wouldn't have even thought to look that up.
It was really cool. Like double thumbs up because that's
3 thumbs up.
That's a neat kind of
for when you really likes. I don't know why I'm doing 2 thumbs up. I don't have 3 thumbs, and yet I'm still.
There's my thumb.
And
3 thumbs up.
And worse still, no one can see me but you. I could have just not said anything. So the cast. Let's talk a little bit about the cast. I enjoy the cast for the most part. I've forgotten his name again. Oh, for God's sake, the dad.
Oh, yeah, from *Halt and Catch Fire*.
*Halt and Catch Fire*. He's fucking brilliant. He's a really good actor. I love seeing him crop up, and it blows my goddamn tiny mind that he was Artie, the strongest man in the world. The universe? The world. From... I can't think of names of things. Was it...
Toby Huss is who you're thinking of.
Toby Huss, yes. He's brilliant. He's brilliant. He was quite good for leveraging a little bit of comic relief.
Yeah,
but not
definitely.
in a cringy way. I thought that was done quite well. He wasn't like... He could quite have easily have just been like bumbling dad stereotype. but they reined it in just enough that he was quite funny and really likable.
You felt it was like things were done a bit tongue in cheek, and he knew what he was doing.
Yeah,
but just wanted to make people laugh.
Well, this is it. This is what dads do. The stereotype of dad jokes are a reason. They're there for a reason, right? They're all a bit daft. So yeah, no, that made a lot of sense. I love Judy Greer. I love Judy Greer. I think up until the ending, which I'm not going to spoil right now, she was somewhat underused.
Yeah, I was surprised when I first heard she was cast to see. It's almost like a Danny McBride thing, right?
Yeah.
Because I've known Judy Greer from comedies, from Archer. Like, she's always been like a performer that does quite eccentric roles.
The first thing I remember
see
seeing her in was Jawbreaker, which I still bloody love. One of my favourite teen films. Absolutely amazing. Okay. But yeah, you're right. No, she is more of a comedic actress. Do you think? So what do you think?
So it's quite surprising to.
Do you think that's why she was cast?
No, not necessarily. I don't think I like my immersion wasn't broken because of it.
Okay.
I think it just came as a surprise in the same way that hearing Danny McBride was taking on a producer role, like
co-writer as well. I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. You just don't expect these people to deviate from what they know.
Yeah.
And I can appreciate it's always a bit of a gamble, but you know, I think it paid off.
And actually, I was about to say, like, and also deviate from the box that you've put them in. But actually, you as an audience don't tend to do that. Like, it's an expectation. It's typecasting's fault. It's maybe they don't have a wide range. Maybe they can only do one thing.
Well, exactly, yeah. And that's why it's a risk, because all of a sudden, you know, it's like seeing Robin Williams in what was it, 1 Hour Photo?
Oh yeah.
You know, knowing he's a comedic actor and he's known for being a comic and such an eccentric, seeing him in that role was just mind blowing.
Yeah, Adam Sandler and stuff like Uncut Gems more recently as well.
I haven't seen that. I was thinking of, but I am so averse to Adam Sandler movies as a rule.
Do you know what? I don't hate the shtick that Adam Sandler does. In a weird way, I fucking respect it, man. Because he's getting to hang out with his mates every day, doing shit that makes them laugh and makes them a ton of money. Some of the stuff I think he makes, like Jack and Jill, I think he's just trolling people to see what he can get away with. Genuinely. I don't think he thinks this is good. But when he wants to act, he can bloody well act. Yeah. So I kind of respect his gig in a weird way. I mean, he's kind of living the dream. But yeah, Judy Greer. She sort of, right up until the end, which phenomenal miniature character arc right at the end there. Up until that point, she just sort of served as like exposition mom. And was actually kind of mean.
It's a tough one because there were so many kind of female. I mean, because they are like predominantly it's a female driven, it's a woman driven kind of protagonist trio.
Which I also love, like the whole multi-generational aspect. Yeah. I think that's great.
But you've kind of on one hand, it's like Laurie's story because she's the one that's been preparing for this day for 40 years and it's finally happening and she's got to like, shit, this is my moment. Then you've got, like you say, the kind of pseudo setup that her granddaughter's going to be the final girl. Yeah. And then kind of Karen in between, who is trying to like rein everything in. So there's a kind of a lot of it's kind of hard to know whose story it is, I guess. Yeah. Not that it necessarily needs to be anyone's story, but you know what I mean?
I do. And I sort of like that misdirection when you think it's going to follow on character, but it actually skips back to other people, and then it's no one person. I mean, well, I was about to say it's no one person's movie. It's Laurie Strode's movie.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just
Very
put that out there. But it's very much about the ensemble cast. It's not just the Jamie Lee Curtis show, which the promo sort of sold it as, like the 40-year showdown that we've all been waiting for, which we got, by the way. I'm not for a second skipping over that. But yeah, I don't know. I really enjoy the fact that they didn't hyper focus on any one character. I like that. But yeah, Judy Greer, I don't know. I tried to get into her sort of frame of mind, like,
yeah,
because she endured the trauma secondhand as a child, and that would fuck you up some. But she was kind of mean.
Yeah, I mean, it is. There is an angle there that's about kind of generational trauma and
inherited trauma is a very real thing. Yeah,
not necessarily abuse, but like how Laurie's kind of how she was impacted from the events in the first movie then informed how she treated Karen, who then it's something they kind of explored a little, I guess.
You could say how it shapes them. No, sorry, that was horrendous.
I've been thinking about making a Laurie Strode joke, so I don't.
Rosie's not here. We're sorry. We can't make the funny.
I've got one right at the end that you'll have to wait for. Yeah.
Do you write jokes down? Oh no, maybe you should script things. Shit. This show could be so much better if I put in some more forethought. Ugh. So, the daughter. I keep forgetting her name. I'm so bad with names.
I remember Karen because Karen.
She is a bit of a Karen, to be fair. Can I speak to Michael Myers' manager, please?
God, can you imagine? I'd love to watch that.
Maybe that'll be Adam Green's Halloween short this year. But the granddaughter. Can we just talk about the worst character in this movie? Worse than the journalists.
Okay.
The daughter's boyfriend. What a punchable face.
What a douchebag.
Genuinely would not get tired of punching that face. And how on earth are we supposed to believe that, spoilers, he didn't get just one girl interested in him, but two?
Right, after... And then he cheats on her and then has the audacity to like
yeets her phone into a fucking blancmange or whatever it was.
And then like try and provoke her into getting it back. I'm like, no, you walk away. And she did, and it was glorious.
Miniature round of applause there for
Golf
whatever
clap.
her name is.
I think it's Alison. I looked it up.
Alison. That sounds right. Just like a whole host of basic white girl names. I mean, probably could have guessed Alison. That would have been like my fourth guess. We'd have got there eventually. So the babysitter, they had to bring back the babysitter thematic element, trope. I don't know. What did you think of her friends? Because I thought they were a little bit annoying too.
I can't remember the guy's name. There was
no, don't ask me.
There's just so many of them, so many characters.
Kevin.
I don't know. The friend
David.
He just yes, sure, why not? One of them.
Aaron. I don't know.
I think it was the guy who got hopped the fence after kind of professing his feelings for.
Oh, that dickhead.
Yeah, it was so like. He got gross, but I started off quite liking him. I like the kind of like third wheel friend that refuses to be third wheel and is just a bit annoying to them both. It was just kind of fun. That
he was
all
right until he went like full on nice guy.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So her other friends who are babysitting the best character of all time. Sassy Kid. The stock character of Sassy Kid. He was great. Everything he said was hysterical. I would babysit that kid, and I don't like children.
He would just want to stay up and watch horror movies.
But fine by me.
Yeah. That is the type of kid who would want to stay up and watch horror movies.
Isn't it? Do you want cookies? You can have cookies. I don't see the problem, and I would get paid for it. Excellent. Sign me up. I would do a better job than she did of babysitting.
Yeah, I'm sure you would.
Not the best babysitter. Not the best washer-upper. Obviously, we had the whole, like, Chekhov's knife moment when she's doing the washing up. Can I just... Second question of the podcast.
We're 45 minutes into it, and we've had 55 minutes into it. 2 questions.
Second very minor gripe / character plot hole. Who the fuck washes up, like, scrubs things, wets them? Who dries the blade end edge first with a tea towel? She? Yeah, and then she turned it over and did the other way. That's asking for that sliced up hand. That is dangerous.
She needs to learn her kitchen etiquette.
She does. And then, after drying it off with a tea towel, puts it on the drying rack. Put it away.
To dry some more.
What are you doing? What are you doing? You've just dried it. Job is done. There's so many problems with the minor character choices in this film.
Like, that's the thing you got. I didn't even notice that. And you're like, you know what? This just ruined the movie for me.
It has. Like, I'm done. I'm out. At that moment, it was too much. Ugh. Very close to that scene as well is my favourite nod in the whole movie to any of the other films in the franchise, and that was the 3 kids who were trick-or-treating wearing the Halloween 3 masks, which made me sort of do a little air punch. I didn't do that. Mentally, I did.
Mental air punch,
but,
yeah.
Yeah, but it was far more pared back. You know, it was just, yeah, that was cool.
It's like mini fist bump.
I was on my own. Yeah, I was on my own. Who am I going to fist bump? The cats. They don't even have fists.
Probably. You probably would. You would definitely try, knowing you.
Third question. Cats. Are they all 4 legs, or do they have cat legs and cat arms? It's not remotely relevant, but inquiring minds would like to know.
My brain. I would say legs. I would say 4 legs.
They have 4 legs.
If they were bipedal, then they'd probably have arms. But since they use them to walk, they're all legs. That is my input on this question.
So the front ones aren't cat hands. It's 4 legs and 4 feet.
If you want to believe they're cat hands, you can believe whatever you want to. Yeah.
Well, who the fuck else am I going to fist bump? I can't foot bump them. That would be weird.
Foot.
Boop. That's the thing now. Okay. Third minor character irritation. It's Halloween.
Have you got a separate category of these?
No, they're all littered throughout my notes. It's Halloween. The clue is in the name.
Yep.
Why is Judy Greer's character wearing a Christmas jumper?
Didn't even pick up on that.
Unless that is the weirdest Halloween costume of all time.
Going super meta with it.
She's got, I think it's a cardigan with Christmas trees on it.
Wow. I didn't notice that.
Sort your life out, Greer.
Speaking of Halloween costumes, I was surprised that they didn't actually play with the idea of people dressing up as Michael Myers for Halloween. I don't know if that would
be very insensitive for them.
Yeah. I don't know whether that would be kind of a bit of a cliche, but it seems like the exact type of thing that a certain type of person would be doing, you know? If there was like a famous mass murderer in your neighborhood.
I hope there isn't.
Well, me too.
Don't give me extra things to worry about in the year of 2020. Good Lord. No, I think you're right. Do you bring that up because you expected to see it or because you hoped to see it?
Expected, I think.
Okay.
I think it was something they could have done. I'm not like gutted that they didn't, but
Yeah.
given that they're going through a town where everyone is dressed up as other things.
And it would have added to the confusion.
Right. Exactly.
That could have been a whole
the
plot
police rock
point.
up and suddenly everyone's dressed up as... I mean, I think it's the type of thing that would have had to have been done fairly subtly and sensibly because that runs the risk of becoming just farce, and that's not the movie they're going for.
No, it's an interesting point though, and it's not something that had occurred to me. And I had a housemate that dressed as Charles Manson once.
Well, there you go.
So
See?
it would be the equivalent of that.
People fetishize mass murderers, you know?
Absolutely. And I mean, Halloween is a spoopy time of year, so...
Exactly. What better time to
what's
be maximum
spookier than
spoops?
that? Many spoops. So... I want to bring it back around. I'm going to steer this train. Can you do you steer trains? I don't know. I guess somebody must.
I think that yeah, you can probably try, but I'm sure the tracks might have something to do with it.
Well, that's kind of, as soon as I said it, I was like, there you dumb. But then we always fall back on this weird train metaphor and it refuses to die. It's been years now.
Back on the tracks. Come on, we're back on the tracks. We're keeping this thing going.
So, the psychiatrist subplot that I mentioned right at the start.
Yes.
This was one of the things that I didn't care for.
Okay.
To me, it sort of felt underwritten. It wasn't fleshed out enough, and it felt like it was sort of included purely for the plot twist.
Yeah.
Which felt a bit cheap to me.
I think that's fair. I think, you've got to, for something like that to land, you've got to be invested. And I think he wasn't given the screen time as a character to actually...
Not at all.
Gain that kind of familiarity that the audience needs to actually become invested.
And had it been Dr. Loomis, then it wouldn't have rung true. Why after 40 years would he have suddenly cracked? So yeah, that was one of the things, Halloween as a whole franchise to me just works better when it's staying in its own lane. Yeah. Just be a slasher movie. Leave the psychology to Silence of the Lambs. Yeah. That's you are not that thing. Do you know what I mean though?
No, I think that's a fair point. It's a very fair point.
So, in terms of other things that made me laugh, well, despite myself in this instance, the cops in the cop car.
I was
the
going through my notes,
cops.
and I just happened upon the note that read, I want to hear more about what a banh mi sandwich is.
It just felt like they were that iconic scene in Pulp Fiction where they're talking about food? Yeah. They were just let's do that, but different. Still French, but different. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I don't know if that was intentional. But those two characters specifically, I'm glad we didn't spend very much time with them. I think that was more than enough. Yeah. But that kind of window into those characters definitely clues you into the comedy background, I think, of the filmmakers. Yeah, and I think it goes to show how out of their depth they are as well. Yeah. I really enjoyed it. I think they balanced the comedy and the horror really well. Because there were, like you say, there are these kind of this vein of comedy that runs through. It never lands. It's not overt enough to interrupt. It never lands strongly enough to disrupt the horror and to question how you feel about the movie as a whole. But it's just there just to liven the mood and keep things chugging along really well. Yeah, and keep it on the somewhat lighter side. It's still a fun horror movie to me. I find this to be a very satisfying film.
I think it does deal with some very, like, when you think about it, it does deal with some very, like, heavy themes. You know, particularly as they're taking Laurie's trauma very seriously and how she reacts to it and how she is, like, consumed her life for the last 40 years and then affected her daughter and then her granddaughter. I think it kind of needs these moments of levity just to kind of, you know, just to keep it a bit brighter.
I completely agree with that. There are moments throughout the film, none more so than the final third, which I guess we should probably start talking about the ending. So throughout the movie, there are very sort of pointed moments at which Laurie is doing things that Michael did in the first movie.
Yeah.
Obviously, the first time that happens, she stood outside a school looking in. A lot of it towards the end. This time it's her bursting into the wardrobe. It's her being pushed out of a window and then not being there when he looks down.
Yep.
And I really enjoyed that. And actually on second viewing, it sort of made me wonder whether the kind of inverting things was a theme. Because there are a lot of things that kind of buck expectation and are like the inverse of what you would expect them to be. And a couple of examples that I can think of off the top of my head are there's a little boy who's in the truck with his dad and they're driving just before they find the bus, the crash bus. And the little boy's talking about how he much prefers dancing to sports and how he just wants to be allowed to do the thing that he likes. And that's completely against kind of gender expectations, societal norms. And again, on those same lines, the granddaughter and her boyfriend have like the gender bent Bonnie and Clyde Halloween costume.
Yes.
Like there are so many moments where it's just like the inverse of what you would expect. And I feel like that's kind of a nice running theme that culminates in Laurie doing a lot of what Michael did.
Yeah, but I think that it has significance to the wider plot as well, because all of a sudden Michael is the hunted and Laurie's the hunter. And I think whether the idea of inversion is something that is deliberately a wider kind of theme for the film or not, it's a definite, it leads to a definite kind of inversion of their relationship from the first one. You know,
I love that. Just when it starts to sort of click into place and you realise just how much she'd planned for it.
Yeah.
Just how much she'd expected and prepared for. And I know it's like, again, a little bit cheap. Like I say, all of these things are things that I fully expected to happen in the film, and yet I still internally cheered when they did. It felt, it didn't feel predictable, even though it was in a way. It felt like I'd been vindicated as a fan of this, as a long-time fan of the franchise. It felt vindicating and it made me happy.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, because I think it's predictability in horror is quite a weird thing, because on, like you're saying, in some things it needs the unpredictability. If you're in a situation that you want to surprise or scare your audience, you don't want it to be predictable. However, if it's something that is thriving on nostalgia or kind of someone's preconceptions or all sorts, then that predictability, like you say, it vindicates the audience, because they're like, oh, I want this to happen. It does happen. Oh, that's great. I love it so much.
Yeah.
You know? Like it's also weird because it does sort of work both ways depending on what type of film is being made.
I absolutely agree. And I think there's also sort of the extra layer of like, you become so familiar with these films and the sorts of things you expect to happen and that you see time and time again, that when you can predict them, it's almost like a mini vindication as well.
Yeah.
Like a nerdy little, I got it right moment.
I think the thing is it's earned. And I think that's perhaps why it does rely on your preconceptions, because
Yeah.
They've had X amount of movies to get you to know these characters and to understand them and to understand their plight. And so, yeah, bringing that in and getting those preconceptions acknowledged and, realizing they're true is just exactly what you need in this sort of film.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. This point, my notes kind of go to shit, and it's just sort of a series of caps lock proclamations that
I'm excited for this.
I'm not 100% sure of what all of them mean. I've just got like, it's like head squish, finger kablamo, panic dungeon, wardrobe fake out, just etc. etc.
Are they just like band names you've come up with and picked out of a hat?
Finger kablamo would be a really good band name. That's the ska band if ever I've heard one.
Oh, definitely.
They would tour with Mustard Plug, you know it. And that kind of leads us up to the big fiery finale.
Yeah.
Which is how that's pronounced now. I wanted to give it a bit of extra flavour. I don't know. I think I've gone a bit mental.
So this is a good time. So you know how like in every single show I say something that breaks your brains a little.
Oh no. Oh, it's already broken, mate. What can you give me your best shot?
Completely like when I mentioned the shark puppet in Jaws.
Oh no, I'd forgotten that again. Damn you.
I'm sorry, I didn't realise. Anyway, moving swiftly on. When Laurie kind of comes out of that closet or whatever she's hiding in and shoots Michael into the staircase down the cellar. She goes, "Goodbye, Michael," and shoots. And my brain just went, "Goodbye, Cole." I was like, "Why are you doing? Why, brain? Why? Why did you do this?"
Halloween with its well-known antagonist, Goodbye, Cole Myers. How dare you?
It was late. I was watching it and it was late and I clearly needed sleep. And that's my excuse and I'm sticking with it.
That's just, if that isn't a mood, I don't know what it is. I just needed some sleep is big 2020 vibes.
Yep.
So how do you feel about the ending? I, for one, bloody loved it.
Yeah, I think if I was more familiar with the franchise, I would love it more. Or like more fond of the franchise, I would love it more.
Okay.
I did really enjoy it. I felt.
How many have you seen, by the way?
Pardon?
How many have you seen of the sequels?
2, 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I haven't seen many. And they're all on now TV, I think, so I've got no excuse. But
'tis the season.
Yeah. No, it was, I felt it kind of had that nice, it wasn't Housebound, which was the film about the agoraphobic woman who gets attacked. She's got...
Shut In.
Yeah. And she's got the whole like trap house thing going on.
Like massive spoilers for Shut In, but the bit with the stairs, dum, 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 oh my God, gave me chills.
Yeah, I love it.
I love, super underrated film.
And I think kind of that had that same sort of vibe, and the same...
Yeah.
Because it's, trap house, that's it. And I think, like I said, I did enjoy it. I think I would like it more if I was more fond of the franchise.
Okay.
That's what I'm getting at.
No, that's absolutely fair. I think... it's difficult for me to sort of separate myself from it. I'm trying to think about whether or not my love for the franchise as a whole has informed my love of this film.
Yeah.
Because it is just a continuation of the first film. I don't think you have to like anything that came after the 1978 film.
Yeah. But I think...
But because I do, I can't separate myself from it.
Yeah, no, I can fully see why that is such a amazing moment for someone who is a fan of the franchise because you've spent so long. I mean, even the sequels aside, I know they're not actually related to this film, but of course they're going to influence your overall view of the franchise.
Yeah.
You've got X amount
It's gotten to the point now where there are so many sort of different versions of this timeline that I'm a bit confused.
There's like 5 of them or something like that, I think.
Do you know what? I think maybe that's why I like this film so much, because it just simplifies it. Yeah. There's less to remember. It's just one film and then it's this film. And for dummies like me, it's a lot easier to remember.
But yeah, I can totally see why it would be just so amazing to watch, you know.
I loved it. I think it was such a, like you said earlier, it felt really well earned. And I think I'm excited that there's going to be 2 more.
Yeah, Halloween Ends and Halloween Kills.
Halloween Kills, yeah. Halloween Kills was supposed to be out this year, obviously. Okay. Thanks, COVID.
Mm-hmm.
That's been pushed back a whole year. I'm interested though, because the teaser was literally just like a few seconds of the 3 women exactly as the film ends.
Oh, okay.
It's just them on the back of the truck, and then you hear fire engine sirens, and Laurie's like, no!
Yeah, it's how a teaser should be done, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That was enough to get me excited.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd have been happy if this was the end.
Mm-hmm. Well, it rounds it off really well. It wraps everything up really nicely, you know, because there's no... The story has, as far as you're aware, ended. You know, it's a conscious decision to actually continue it on, and whether that'll be successful or not, we don't know. You know,
I wonder how early the sequels were greenlit, how much that was intended, or whether this was supposed to just bring it full circle and then put a full stop at the end. I'd like to know.
That'd be interesting to look into.
Because, like I said, John Carpenter seemed convinced this would be the last one. Because maybe that was just wishful thinking.
John Carpenter with his son, I believe, and someone else. So he's definitely got involvement in the film to some extent.
I like what they did with the theme tune.
Mm-hmm.
It was sort of just a touch modernized, just enough. And actually, I really liked the opening credits with the like reverse rotting pumpkin. I fucking loved that. So that was really well done.
It was so perfect for, like, thematically it was perfect because it's like it's a pumpkin, which has obviously become so associated with the franchise, but also the idea of it starting off rotting and just coming back to life is so representative of the film as a whole.
The inversion.
Yeah, exactly.
We can make it work. We can make this metaphor work. But yeah, apparently that took like 3 weeks.
I'm not surprised.
Of a time lapse that they just reversed. That's how long it takes for pumpkins to rot.
Noted.
Apparently. In what climate? I'm unsure. Who knows? I don't know the variables.
I guess we'll find
I'm not
out
a scientist.
in 2 or 3 weeks'
Stop asking me. Right. I have a couple of facts before we wrap up. I said the death count was 19 already. Apparently this was the 2nd biggest horror movie opening of all time.
Okay.
Second only to It.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
And I can't think of anything that's come out in the 2 years since that would have superseded it.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing it's still... Oh, maybe Invisible Man, actually. Ooh, how well did that do?
I would say it still had... Oh, I mean, that's a complete guess, but I would say it still had...
Ooh. Interesting. Yeah. Invisible Man's the better film. I will give it that. And also, Michael Myers has already survived being burned twice in 2 different films.
Oh.
So I guess it stands to reason that fire would not kill him in this instance.
Valid point.
But it was also in 2 films that have been shit-canned in this universe.
Yeah, say, well, if that's the case, then Laurie Strode should know what's up and have not used fire, you know?
Well, quite. She's got nobody else to blame. Oh, no, I think we just victim blamed. Oh, dear. She was asking for it.
Oh, no.
So, on that note, Has your opinion of this film changed on second watch?
It depends on what I thought of it last time.
Oh, yes. That I was about to say that would go without saying, but you said
in that I can't remember it. Like, I
remember you didn't love it.
No, I think that's only because I lacked the familiarity with the story as a whole. I can, like I've said multiple times this episode, I can see why someone who loves Halloween will love this film.
You say that, but a lot of people who love the franchise don't care for this film very much. It's been very
really?
polarizing. Yeah,
interesting. But I can see why that as well. Like, because it's such a it's a definite like a serious take on Halloween. It's not campy and fun and cliche ridden. It's slightly more grounded. So I can see kind of both sides of that coin. That said, though, like I really enjoyed it. I did.
Okay.
I think it was. It's a fun watch. Like it like I've said, it kind of the comedy keeps it running along nicely.
It is a fun film. Fun is such an overused word, but it is a fun film, isn't it?
Yeah.
I caught myself thinking that a few times while I was watching it last night. And actually, it's quite a zippy hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, because that's on the longer side of a standard horror movie, isn't it? And I don't think it
certainly
seems particularly long. So
yeah.
No, I really enjoy it. I would give it like 7.5 out of 10.
That's good.
Yeah,
that might be like the most you've ever given a slasher.
Probably. No, I think it's because it is making a conscious effort to deviate from the tropes that make a slasher film a slasher film, and I appreciate that.
Me too. I'm gonna bowl right in here and largely agree with you. It's a film I'm probably going to revisit. Like, this might become one of my Halloween staples. Who knows? My favourite Halloween movie of the franchise remains Halloween 3. And again, maybe that's, because I'm a dum-dum. And that is the simplest timeline to remember because it's the only one. That's even simpler than this one. And obviously, Tom Atkins' majestic moustache. What's not to love? I think this is a very competently made and very confidently made horror film. It felt like they had quite a clear idea of what they wanted to do and they achieved it pretty successfully. As you've said, I think they kind of blended comedy in subtly, but enough that it kind of punctuated some of the more serious scenes. And I'm just fucking stoked to see that face-off at the end. I think that was brilliant. And Judy Greer, her character, Karen, I remembered her name. She redeemed herself with that brilliant little fake out that I was a total sucker for. I love that.
I mean, of course
that made me want to cheer.
She's her mother's daughter, isn't she?
I loved it. That was great. Yeah. I think on second viewing, I kind of enjoyed it more.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah. More of an appreciation.
Yeah.
It's going to come as no surprise that I enjoyed this film. And I think I would probably agree with like a 7.5, actually. I put it on Letterboxd last night and I either gave it a 3.5 or a 4 out of 5.
Okay.
And I've forgotten which. Because it is an imperfect film.
Yeah.
There are certain characters, there are certain moments that didn't gel well for me. But overall, particularly the second half, heckin' fun for some of the family. Not all of the family. But some of it.
Definitely some of them.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
So, which one of the franchise are we going to cover next Halloween?
I guess you guys will have to stick around and find out.
Maybe Halloween Kills will be out by then.
Maybe. You'd hope so, wouldn't you?
And we can actually set foot in cinemas. Who knows? let's not get too ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
That's a wild prospect at this point in time.
Yep.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun discussing that.
Yeah, and actually that's a good moment to say, if you guys have enjoyed it, we've recently opened up a $2 tier on our Patreon, where you can access both our Discord server and all 36, I believe.
36
well,
minisodes. I think it's like 35 minisodes and a video, but we don't talk about the video.
You'll have to pledge $2 to work out what the video is.
36 bits of extra content, and we've got a great little community, and we've refined our tiers so that it's just the one now. We think it's pretty good value for money. We can't stop talking. The minisodes just keep getting longer and longer. You can't shut us up. The last one was an hour, which is not a minisode, it's just a sode.
And that was just you two. Imagine what Imagine what it would be if I was on there.
4 hours. Oh, good Lord.
Are you suggesting I can talk for 3 hours over what I've watched?
Yes.
Okay. We'll see.
Like maybe with a break in the middle.
Just a toilet break.
See.
Just a casual pee break.
Yeah. Wee break. Absolutely. But on that note, I think that's a good place to wrap up.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a ball. Thank you for talking with me for an hour and a half, Phil. It's been a joy.
As always.
And thank you to everybody for tuning in. If you're still here at this point, what are you doing? It's over. Go away. But before you do, stay spooky.